in this video I'm going to try and show you how what to do to fly to Tamworth using TACAN Navigation. And to do that I'm flying the Vertical Reality Simulations FA-18E, and it's a superb aircraft. I've had it for a few years now. But not to prolong the video, we press the menu on the bottom of the left hand display. You press menu, and up on the second button up is HSI. We press that, and up at the top here we have TCN, which is TACAN. So we'll box that. Okay, so now we have to put in a TACAN code, and I just happen to have this one ready for us, which is 107X. Now 107X corresponds to the VOR at Tamworth, which is 116.0, and when you look it up on the comparison charts you'll find that 107X is equivalent to that. And so if I press the TACAN symbol again, I can change it to a Y. Now Y would be 116.5 megabytes or megahertz, but 107X is 116 megahertz. Okay, so we know we've got that set up. We've got the TACAN on, and we're ready to roll. And I'm going to climb to about 8,000 feet because it's a line of sight issue, and so I shall take off. I'm using the test version of the aircraft. Okay, we'll take off. Right, we're airborne, undercarriage up, flaps up, and I'm going to climb up to 8,000 feet. Now on the HUD you can see it climbing up here, 1,000, and then the speed also is 280, 290. So what I have to do is press Control R, and that stops the speed from increasing and puts it down to a good cruising speed. And we have the ATC here showing that the autopilot or the auto throttle rather is on. And when we get up to about 8,000 feet, I'll press the button on the unit here. 8,000 feet, I press BALT and switch on the autopilot power, and the aircraft comes down to level off at 8,000 feet. But at the moment it's not flying in the correct direction, but we'll leave that as it for the moment, and I'll set it up for the heading next. Okay, we'll set it up to fly to Mount Sandon, and which is we look on Tramp and it's 226 degrees, so we put in our scratch pad 226 and then enter it into the heading box, and the aircraft is turning round now to the heading 226. So we'll leave it flying at that for a while, and we'll let it do its thing at the moment. Okay, now I've got it flying to Mount Sandon at 8,000 feet, and I've pressed the TR, the tracking button, up on the top here on the green panel, and that couples the TACAN with the system. And up here you can see that the little T mark for TACAN, that is the position of Tamworth at the moment. And when we get closer to Tamworth, we shall get a runway heading which is set down here on the select button, which is 301. We know that from Plan G and Tramp, and I've flown out to Tamworth hundreds of times, and I've got to know the frequencies and directions and all that, but we'll leave it set up as it is and we'll come back later. You'll notice on the head-up display we have an arrow here. This is the runway course selection, 301 degrees, and at the moment we're approaching this arrow, but we've still got 94 nautical miles to go. Down here in that thing it's got the auto throttle with 93 now, and so we're heading in the right direction. Actually we're heading slightly left of Tamworth because we want to line up with the runway heading, and so we'll have to come in at Mount Sandown somewhere and turn in towards Tamworth, but that's later. As we approach Mount Sandown, I'm descending to about 6,000 feet, and at Mount Sandown, 6,000 feet, we're sort of lined up ready for the approach to Tamworth. At the top of the left-hand display unit you can see a little arrow which is slowly coming down towards the aircraft in the center. Now this arrow is the same as the arrow up in your head-up display, and it's the heading direction of 301 degrees into Tamworth. And at the moment we've got a bit of distance to cover, but this arrow will come down, or the aircraft will come up to meet the arrow, and we'll know that when we hit the arrow we're 301 degrees from Tamworth, so we can set our course to 301 at that point. In the top of our left-hand display we have a figure here of 276 degrees, and so we're 276 degrees from Tamworth, but we want to be 301. So we can see the arrow is coming down to the aircraft, and we'll shortly be able to turn onto 301. And if we turn onto 301 at about 298, 295, the arc of the turn will compensate for the turn that we do. Okay, the bearing from Tamworth now is 292, and very shortly we'll see that the arrow is coming down to the aircraft, and very shortly we'll be turning onto 301, and that's say 295 will turn, which is now very soon. Okay, well, we'll get ready to turn. We get onto there and we'll turn onto 301, click on the heading button, and we're starting to turn. And the bearing so far is 294, 297, so we're not far off the runway heading. Okay, we'll let it turn a bit. At this point, the head-up display is the most important thing that you're looking for. But we go have a look down at our left-hand display, and we'll see that the pointer has come round to almost dead ahead, and going back to the head-up display, the arrow is almost vertical. Okay, now I'm at 5,400. Now over, you'll see the range of hills that's about 4,000 feet high, so I don't want to come any lower than 4,000 feet at this point. But once we get over that ridge, we can drop down to about 3,000. If you have tramp set up, which I would suggest, you can have a look at tramp and see how it's lining up with the localizer, and adjust it accordingly. And we can see that the vertical arrow on the HUD is just about spot on. We're right on course, so we'll just let it fly for a while. What I need to do now is to reduce the speed to 240 knots, because you can't put the undercarriage down until above 240 knots. So what I do is reduce the throttle and press Control R, and the speed will come down. You want it to be 240 or just a bit less, so that's 260, 250, 240. Okay, now you press Control R and it stabilizes at 237. Now this figure gives you the angle of attack necessary to approach Tamworth Airport, or if you set your TACAN code to 57X, then you'd be landing on the Nimitz. And I often spend quite a time flying around searching for the Nimitz with TACAN. It's very good. Okay, at this point we can start descending. So what I've done, I've clicked on this one here, which is a manual altimeter change thing. Okay, so go back to the head-up display, and we'll come down to 3,000. And the beauty of this aircraft is you can set the altimeter settings or headings, and it doesn't vary. It won't come back to neutral again, as a lot of things do. And so we can see from the arrow that we're spot on target, and if we look on tramp we can see that it's on target too. So we'll get down to about 3,000 and level off a bit until we can see the runway. Okay, now we can see the runway coming up ahead, and I'm at 3,000 feet, so I can move the cursor down, and now we just fly manually and keep that little dot where the black square is. The black square is actually the lights of the runway, but eventually the black square will disappear and the runway will show up ahead. Okay, now what we do, we put our gear and flaps down. Now we have to do that and also press again Control R, and this gives you the approach, and we have the gear down at 160 knots and full flap. Okay, we'll just maintain the approach angle. Now you can see on the left hand side of the HUD the yellow dot, which means that we're on target. We're on the right glide slope, as it were, and so it's all looking good for the moment. Okay, now we can see the runway coming up, so we can adjust our approach. I usually aim for the piano keys. As we get closer, we can see them, and you just need a little touch on the control column just to shuffle it along to the left hand side a bit, and it'll return to a sort of neutral place there. Okay, we're heading pretty well. Let's come to the right a bit and down, and to the right a bit more. Okay, and when the spot is where you want it, that'll be the place where we touch down. Okay, I've got it now on the keyboard, and it's coming in for a beautiful landing. A little bit more to the right. Okay, now you just let it hit the ground. You don't flare out with this thing. You just let it hit the ground, and the undercarriage absorbs all the shock. We're coming in beautifully. Okay, brakes. That's a good landing. Okay, so now we're 48 knots and stopped. Okay, I'll just set it up for a replay of what we've just done. Now you can see the angle of attack there, that's automatically set, and for the approach, and it's all looking good. Flaps down, gear down, and coming in at about 150 knots, very steady, and as you can see, it's a wonderful aircraft, and I like the technology. It's as real as it gets, I suppose, as the saying goes. Okay, we're coming in at 1,500 feet. Mind you, the level of the runway is at 1,300, so coming in beautifully. There we are, piano keys and touchdown. What a beautiful landing. Okay, we might leave the video there, and then we just have to taxi and park.